Hey all, this is Val here with another Epic 7 video. And it's another early morning. I'm trying to get some videos done right off the bat. So if the volume is a little low, I do apologize. Now, today we're going to be talking about the anatomy of an arena team. So what am I talking about? Okay, so this is my arena team. Now, there's a few things you're going to need to have a successful arena team, and this applies whether you're doing single target damage or you're cleaving. You're going to need an armor break, a combat readiness increase, obviously an attack buff, and then your AoE DPS. That is the core mechanics of a arena team, especially when it's based off speed. Now, I'm specifically talking about speed in this situation. If you're running a bruiser team, that team is really built to take punishment and to dish it out either based on HP or defense. So it's a slower team. It could also be a cleave team depending on if there's a AoE defense or HP scaling cleaver. So it works in that case. But again, the formula is typically the same. You want an appropriate buff. In my case, it would be attack. In the case of a bruiser team, it'd be defense or HP. You want an armor break just to make sure, or you want to ignore defense, which is also an option. So there's a lot of ways to do it, but basically DPS, combat buffer, combat readiness buffer. And when I say combat buffer, either HP, defense, or attack, depending on how your monsters are scaling, or heroes or champions, whatever game that you're playing at the time. So we're going to talk about mine, how it works, and what you need to accomplish similar results. So starting with Diane, this is my attack buffer. Then we have Kisei, which is DPS. We have Lorena, DPS, and then we have Requiem War, which is my armor break as well as combat readiness buff. Now, in a perfect turn, how you want this to go, you want RR to move first all the time. Because when RR moves first, that means you're going to get your combat readiness first. That means everybody is going to go behind you. Now, you can, if you say you don't have enough combat readiness because your units aren't fast enough. I built all my units with speed, so if RR goes first, my whole team is moving first. But let's say you don't have that option, you don't have the speed set, you know, you've got, maybe you've got lifesteal, maybe you have the attack set, so you don't have a lot of speed. So in that case, you can swap out one of the DPS units and then put in another combat readiness buffer. An easily accessible one just came to us in the form of Ruzid, or you can use Judith. So how this would break down is Requiem War goes, she armor breaks, it doesn't get resisted, everyone gets combat readiness. Then next Diane goes, buffs attack, Lorena goes and one-shots whichever unit you armor broke. And now, because lately, at least in Challenger 3 and 4, which is where I've been hovering, people typically bring 2 DPS units on defense. And so I have Kisei to reset that unit. So that way, let's say they've got like a haste and a kin. So I'll typically armor break the kin, kill it, and then I will reset or increase the cooldown. I keep saying reset, it's not really correct. I would increase the cooldown of haste by 1 to 2 turns depending on what Kisei lands. So that's typically how it goes. Now when you take a look at stats, you need a lot of speed on that first unit. I'm still in the process of speed tuning my RR, but right now I'm at 192. Okay, and don't forget that plus or 10 variance. That also plays effect in it. If you want to lock it in, you're talking about 210, 220 speed, which I'm a bit away from. I do have some gear moves that I'm going to make when I have gear that should get her to about 206, but I'm still 4 short of where I really should be with her. I want her to move. Now, when you think about this, right, and you're making your speed team, just make sure everyone has speed. As long as they're fast enough, one combat readiness buffer will get you through it, right? Because remember, speed is the amount at which they gain combat readiness per turn. So if you do combat readiness with her, you buff, they jump ahead 20%, they still have their natural speed when their turn comes up, which will allow you to lap the person. Now, if you don't have it, if you're like, hey Val, I want to build a totally destructive team, then you are looking at another combat readiness buffer. So in this case, like I said, Ruzit is a valid option. Between Ruzit and RR, you're going to get 40% combat readiness. Even if you're not on speed, that should be enough to guarantee that your whole team will move before the other team. Now, I haven't tested it, but the math in my head and from my own personal battles, if I had a Ruzit there, pretty much every single time I would get first turn as long as Ruzit or RR went first. That is the key. You need to go first. So the more speed, the better. This is also why base speed is important, because you only have the amount of speed to work with that is your base. Meaning, if you have a 105 speed base unit, and let's say you get it 90 speed, just as an example, you have now have 195 speed. Let's say the next person's combat readiness buffer is 110, and they got 90 speed as well. Well, now they're 200 speed, so they're definitely going to outspeed you. You both have the same bonus speed, but because the other person's base speed is higher, they have the advantage. I know it's simple math, but it's important to explain why base speed is so important. Now, that doesn't mean your unit is useless. Like, oh man, you know, I got a 105 speed. This guy has a 112. I'm screwed. You don't know their gear. It's possible they could be slower. There's been many times I've outsped a Clurry with my RR. Now, that could just be because of the +10 variance. I don't know. But it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to lose. The more speed you have for your combat readiness buffer, your first attack unit, the better it's going to be. Now, you take a look at my next unit that's supposed to move, which is going to be Diane. So there you go. You can see my Diane is at 190. She's slightly slower than my RR. That's just to help to try to ensure that RR goes first. But if you want to be safe, you have to have, I believe it's 20 speed more than the unit. You want to make sure they never go before you. If I'm not mistaken, I believe it's 20 speed or 10. I could be wrong. I could be wrong. So if you know, actually go ahead and leave it in the comments below. We want to make sure that the community gets the right information. So she goes, she buffs attack, and now I'm ready to kill something with Lorena. So then she comes in. You can see she's only got 173 speed, just because I want enough to make sure when the turn starts, she gets a good jump. So that way when my combat readiness buffer goes, that she's going to jump ahead of everyone else. So far that has worked. Every now and then a Diane will cut in front of her, which is sort of a bummer, but as long as defense break lands, the anti-crit really doesn't play a part. The defense break landing is key, at least in my situation. Then lastly, I follow up with Kisei. Again, I'm only looking for about 150, 160 speed in this particular case, just because, again, she's going to be high enough that when my combat readiness buffer goes, she is definitely going to jump ahead to the front of the class. Now, it's important to understand that, again, there's two distinct things that affect your combat readiness. There's combat readiness directly, which means you jump immediately ahead in line, okay? Then there's speed. Speed says you're not going to jump immediately, but when your turn comes, you are going to gain more combat readiness. This is why I have zero fear of Silk and Yuna teams. Those teams, yes, they do get speed right off the bat, but it does nothing. If their Silk or Yuna is super fast, like, and they go before me, okay, so they have speed. I'm still going to kill them because RR is going to go, and I'm just going to start picking off their DPS. Now, in a cleave team, it's the same exact thing, except for in a cleave team, you really don't need a second DPS or a cleanup unit, as it's sometimes referred to. All you have to do is just make sure your cleaver goes first, and then you can pick them off. So basically, you're blowing your whole show in that one attack. In my case, I have 2 attacks to get things done. In a cleave, you have 1. So in a cleave team, like I said, take out Lorena, drop in Ruzid, take out Kisei, drop in like Clarissa or Bellona, and then you just go to town. Believe it or not, I know I've been told Bellona is an excellent unit for cleave, but I have a serious love for Clarissa. I have yet to make a cleave team. I have 2 options in those 2 units. I think I'm going to go with Clarissa because Clarissa just hits like a truck. Back in the day, I mean, she did well for me. She did well. But the concept is still the same. So let me show it to you. We're going to talk about now the anatomy basically of an arena fight. Now for me, I have to be very specific on the teams that I pick. Just like any speed team, I have to outspeed them to win. There are a few edge cases where I don't outspeed them and I still pull out the W, but the difficulty increases quite significantly when that happens. Now we're going to try this secondary team here, and I know what you're thinking, but Val, Cluries are going to be fast, they're going to outspeed you, they're going to taunt you. So remember what I said in the beginning. Look at the teams and know your teams. Here, and know your opponent's teams as well. Here is why I don't fear fast Cluries. Clury will always, I will say 99.9% of the time, taunt Diane. I've ran this a million and one times. Well, not a million and one. I wish I had, because I'd have a ton of conquest points. But I've ran it a lot of times. Typically, Clury taunts Diane. Now, if she taunts Diane, it's not a big deal for two reasons. One, because my RR typically is going to go first. She's going to cleanse it, making it useless, right? And I'll still be able to get my attack buff. Two, if RR gets the armor break, typically Lorena has been able to kill all the units even without a crit. That's because I'm targeting DPS units. Remember, I'm not targeting like thick tanks like Crow or anything like that. I'm looking at their weakest DPS unit. I'm picking it off. Also, looking at my team, because I know my team, which is important, know your team and what it can do, is that, let's say I have a Bellona and let's say I have a haste. Well, I know that my Kisei is going to be weak to the Bellona. So I'm going to armor break the Bellona, use Lorena to pick off the Bellona, and then I'm going to come in with Kisei, and I'm going to increase the cooldowns of haste so he can't do his skill 3, and then the next turn, haste will be dead. All this time, Diane could have been taunted. It would make no difference to that lineup. Again, knowing your team, knowing how the units perform, and knowing your opponent's team are a very important part of it. Now, with my team, unfortunately, I can't just pick anything I want to do, but I can do ML Kin teams, I can do Diane teams, I can do Clury teams. Teams that throw me off are like Shadow Rose, Cartuja teams, sometimes Judge Kisei teams, because Judge Kisei's reset is just huge. It is huge, and I do have enough to make a immunity set for quite a few of my units, but unfortunately the stats haven't rolled where I need them to roll to be able to switch the gear around. But when that happens, I will be running immunity, and I'll have less fear of a Judge Kisei team because she really doesn't do damage. If she doesn't reset you, I mean, that first turn is useless. But enough talking. Let's take a look at how this is going to play out. Now, if I don't outspeed the Clary, I'm not very worried about it. If I don't outspeed the Diane, I'm not really worried about it. I just really need to, okay, this is, I said that can happen. Again, it's Diane, not a big deal. And look, RR immediately cleanses the taunt. This is why Vile on her is super important. Now, I know in my team setup, how it works basically is that I want I want Requiem Roar to be as fast as she possibly can with Vile. That means more cleanses. That means more chances I'm going to go first. Now let's take a look at our team lineup here to see our skill. Look at this. Remember, she only has 150, but once I do my armor break, she's going to get 99, and she's going to jump right up here. She's going to jump. That's just how it is. She's going to jump. All these units are going to jump, and my whole team is going to move before them. So my slowest unit is at 79%. She's going to get 29% combat readiness, and she's going to be faster. Their next move is Diane. Even if Diane went first and buffed anti-crit, as long as RR's armor break lands on Lorena, it's done. Because my Lorena, unfortunately, she doesn't hit that hard if she doesn't crit. I'm sure just like everyone else. But let's finish the match out. So we're going to go ahead and take out her. We do get the armor break. We're going to buff attack. And then we're going to kill Lorena. And that is pretty much it for this team. Now, your next target, so you look at this, and again, know your team. Know the opponent's team and who's going to do damage. The next biggest threat is not Clury. The next biggest threat is actually Crow, because Crow has combat readiness debuff, and his ult is going to kill someone, period. He's just going to kill someone. On my team specifically, he's going to be able to pick whoever he wants to kill and kill them. So I want more time to be able to kill him. So we want to go ahead and we're going to do Kisei's skill cooldown increase, and he's going to be the next person we want to take out. Now, he isn't even a very tanky Crow. This anti-crit buff doesn't work. And to be honest with you, here comes the next part of my team and knowing them. So the next part is the buff from Diane on the opponent's team, which is the shield. I want them to shield because my Kisei will do 70% more damage from shield. Now, in this case, it's going to be a little bit more troublesome because they are running Rod, and they have stupid Clurry healing every turn. It's going to be slow, but eventually we are going to win, because once we get armor break on Crow, he's pretty much dead. We're not going to do the whatchamacallit. We're just going to do this to ignore defense. Now, I do have the 100% guarantee on RR for... See, I mean, this isn't a tanky Crow. This is definitely not how you want your Crow. Definitely not. So I do have the 100% armor break and 100% effectiveness on RR. Even with that, she still gets resisted, unfortunately. I don't need to ult, and I want to save the ult specifically to kill either Clurry or Diane. We're going to kill Clurry next, or buff. We're probably not going to buff shield anymore because we just want to get the match over with. I don't see a point in buffing shield. Clurry isn't going to kill anyone. So we're not going to burn. And we still crit. Good, good, good. But as you can see, it is slower than a cleave team. That's why I do want to build one. I just really got to make a decision on if I'm going to go Bellona or if I'm going to go Clarissa. Clarissa is amazeballs. Absolutely amazing, because she's her own self-cleanup unit. What I mean by that, if she kills someone, she immediately procs another AE. So, I mean, you don't need a cleanup unit with Clarissa. Where on the other hand, with Bellona, it's possible if you don't one-shot everybody, you will. So I might go with Clarissa. We'll see. Again, I don't want to buff because I just want this over with. We'll armor break. We'll actually burn it to do a little bit extra damage. And then we will burn this. Didn't get a crit. Well, that would have killed her if we did. But it's pretty much over. And that is honestly how it goes. Like, as you saw, I lost to the Clurry as far as speed goes. But even if I had been taunted, I would have still likely have killed the Lorena. If not, I could have just finished her up with Kisei. Now, that would mean that Crow would have been able to push someone's combat readiness back. In my experience, for whatever reason, he always targets Lorena, at least in my case. So my damage would have suffered a little bit. Fight would have been a little longer, but because it wasn't a tanky Crow, we would have eventually have gotten the W there. So we'll head back. We'll take a look at my team. We'll take a look at the stats so you can see what I have, and then we'll wrap up the video. Oh, good grief. I hate it when I click the wrong button. Here, let's go. I guess I could have went from there. Okay, so here we are. So there's my Diane. Here's her abilities. There's her stats. There's my Kisei. That's what I've leveled up. There's my Lorena. There's her stats. And lastly, here's my RR. And there's the abilities that I've leveled up. Now, I'm a huge fan of RR. I am going to be max 6-star awakening her, and I'm going to be finishing off her healing and her skill 1. Her skill 1 really is underrated. This attack down buff, like, is just amazing. Even at 60%, it lands quite a bit of the time. I think she is well worth the investment to go all the way down both trees. The actual damage here that you get, or excuse me, the heal that you get from her damage is also pretty nice. It's kind of on par slightly with Clurry's. It's a little less. If you stack RR and Clurry with their passive buffs, you really don't even need another healer. Like, even if you have a Diane, you could honestly run your Diane on You don't need Celestine. You don't need Rod of Amaryllis. You can go with like what I have, which is the Combat Readiness artifact. I forget the name of it. And you'll be perfectly fine because that's a lot of healing every turn. It really does add up. It's just ideas. But that's my team, and that is the anatomy of arena and an arena fight. Now keep in mind, of course, you know, adjust this to your units. Don't look at this and say, well, Val, I don't have these units. Okay, that's fine. But what do you have? That's a combat readiness buffer. What do you have? That's an AoE attacker. What do you have? That's an attack buffer. That's all you have to ask yourself. You don't need these specific units because you just need these core units in this type of team regardless of who those units are. So don't worry about saying, well, I don't have RR, I don't have Diane. I realize Diane, a lot of contention about her because some people missed her, some people think she's OP. She's not really OP at all. You just saw from the team I went against, she's not. She is a good unit to have, but definitely not required for any portion of the game. All right, that's going to do it for this video. If I left something out or you just want to drop a comment on some teams that you're using, go ahead and leave it down in the comments below. Yeah, as always, thank you all for watching, and all you dudes and dudettes out there, stay frosty.